Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lula. Joining us now is our friend Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7. BC, what's going on, man?
Oh, not much. Voice is a little weak, like I've been yelling at officials all week, so bear with me a little bit, but I'm good.
BC, are you under the weather, or is it is it just how you woke up with the changing of the cooler temps momentarily?
No, it's mild. It's a mild head cold. I don't know, something. It's not anything. I don't want anyone to worry about me. I'm going to be all right.
Mr. Don't Cry for Me, Argentina. I get it, BC. I mean, you're like Lone Wolf McQuaid out here. Hey, B, I have a question, though, because we didn't talk about it, and I missed it with Brunts. What were the travel arrangements to Seabus?
We flew out to Cincinnati.
Oh, that's no fun.
Yeah, that's what we had, kind of a roundabout trip.
All right.
Cincinnati, we didn't have any Skyline chili before anyone asked. The hour we got to Cincinnati, that would have been a very big mistake, I think.
We stayed across. The kids say catty corner. We stayed across the street from a little strip mall that had a Skyline chili in it, and all I could think to myself, even though I'm pro economy, I was like, "Don't do it. Don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe. Don't go there. It's not good. It's not good. It's not good. Nobody likes orange, brown sugar chili. Like, don't do it." So I'm glad. It's good to see you did not fall for the tourist trap.
No, we didn't have that. So it was like a 2-hour trip to Columbus and then 2 hours back to Cincinnati, then flew early Sunday. So that was it. So there was no Werther's Originals, none of that stuff. It was get in, get out. And you know what? I have to, like last week on this show, I was one of those people I would say was kind of like defeatist about that game going in. I was not looking forward to the trip. I didn't have a good feeling about it. And so, the way I look at things is you make these predictions. You think a game is going to go a certain way, or you're predicting, like, I think Ohio State's going to run away with it. You got to come back and say, that was nice stuff by Nebraska in a lot of ways. And so that was my takeaway. But I think both Brunts and I kind of felt like that because it was a trip, honestly, that I wasn't expecting it to be the type of game we got. But I'm glad the guys inside the walls were expecting that game. And, it brings some encouragement into this week and what can happen.
Well, Ravi, he turned tail. He was mad at your peer, and he had a chance to address it yesterday. And much like France and Switzerland, my man waved the white flag. He did not understand the pessimism going into Columbus, and he was very upset about it last week. Is that not correct, Ravi?
No, yeah, it is. And,
Schaefer scared him, though. He's like, and I couldn't believe Schaefer last week. And then we had Schaefer on. I was like, hey, Mike J., how we doing? But Schaefer was in rare form yesterday, though. He was hilarious.
Yeah, I didn't feel necessary to rub it in his face or anything.
He didn't want to get beat up. That's the thing.
He's not coming to Omaha. You know that. I think he said on some other programs or podcasts or something that, he thought that like Heinrich Harburg needed a ton of touches and stuff like that, and talking about getting real gimmicky and listen, I would have been okay if they had decided to pull out a few more tricks, but I think the ironic part about Nebraska playing the way they did and staying as close as they did, and obviously taking that lead in the fourth quarter, was it seemed pretty just line up and play. Like there wasn't a lot of, this wasn't Boise State against Oklahoma or anything. Like Nebraska just kind of lined up and played with them.
I didn't have as big a problem with. There were some people who were, I think, disappointed in the offense, and of course, there was a lot of talk immediately about the screen calls, and I understand pieces of it, but I would say that was pretty good Ohio State defense, and there's basically 2 or 3 plays in that game that were there to be made that Nebraska just didn't make, and Nebraska had more opportunities, but that's what all you can ask for in a game like that is you set yourself up like you get a play like the one to Banks in the third quarter where he's running free and you just don't connect there. And I understand it's a young quarterback evolving, and he knows as well as anybody on certain plays when it could have been something else. But, there were those plays that were right there in front of you. And So I thought there were some encouraging things even on offense, especially in that third quarter. I thought they were out formationing Ohio State a bit, and you saw that run game get going a bit. So you're hoping that can kind of carry forward into November, because I do think there were maybe some things found from that game that they can use. As Rule said, you got to carry it forward, and that's what I wrote right after the game. I thought it was an encouraging day. I understand we don't like to talk about moral victories around here, but now you got to stack on top of it, right? You got to use it into this week, and if you do that into November, then it was a very important day for the program. Now, if you go and you give it back on Saturday and don't play well against UCLA, then everybody who is like, well, a loss is a loss, they're kind of right when it's all said and done. So you got to make sure that game did mean something as it pushes you on to November.
BC, we could talk about like making progress without having it be a moral victory, though, right?
I was just going to say
like
couching that thing.
Like there's a difference.
It drives me up the wall because BC, not to hop in here, young Ravi.
Yeah.
The thing that pisses me off the most about when people say, "Hey, I know there are more victories," they were the biggest babies going into this game. I don't know. I can't have BC. You know, I'm trying not to get fired up. I promised myself I was not going to choose violence this morning. But you know how I get, right? We talk out of both sides of our mouth. We were all in our fields, and Ohio State's going to be mad, and man, we're licking our wounds, and it was this, that, and the other. And we played tough, and there'll be the same people. Well, there are no moral victories. Like, dude, pick a lane and drive, right? Like the fickle back and forth, wishy-washy bull crap is the thing that like drives me insane. Yes, morally it was uplifting. It boosted your spirits. Do you still want to win? Yeah, but let's not act like we don't feel better after that game psychologically than we did before. I don't know why we still couch it to like. I
mean, it's like Coach Rule said, you can be proud without being satisfied. Right? Proud of the effort.
He was clear about that.
Without being satisfied, right?
He was still mad.
Right. I mean, I thought Rule framed it really well after the game. I mean, that's all I'm saying is, I think it was a good day for Husker football, and it's a builder. And now play like that next week. It's what he told those guys in the locker room right after. Let's carry this forward, be that team again. And if you are, I think it was a very important week for Nebraska football that we'll look back on if they can make November successful, because you have to have a pretty good culture to have had the week around here that was after Indiana with everything swirling in the wind and come out and play a game like that. So that's the part that sticks out to me. That's impressive. How those guys stuck together, how they believed, and they didn't really buy into talk that you're a trash football team or anything like that. They thought, we can go up and get some things done against these guys. Let's go do it. And I think that first stand by the defense was just huge. And you're hoping it's a tipping point, I think, to the rest of the season, because they were put in a tight spot. The game had started in that way. It's like, oh, here we go.
I mean, that was awful. No. You couldn't have drawn it up any worse. Outside of Ohio State scoring on the short field, that would have been a real debacle. But you couldn't have.
Nebraska's possession.
You couldn't have. And the bad punt.
Yeah.
Yeah. For like two or 3 minutes, everybody who said duck for cover seemed like they were right. And then the defense said, no, you're not. No, we got control of this game in a lot of ways. And that was big. So we'll see if that can be sort of, I think last year, they had that stand against Illinois on the goal line. And that was big for that team in their growing process. And I feel like that series could ultimately be big for this team, too, because it kind of boosted them past the previous week. You saw guys like Jamari and MJ, I think, play the best football they've played at Nebraska. So that's got to make you feel good going into November, too, if those guys are playing at that level.
We're talking with Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. BC, you put up a poll on your Twitter page about what you think or what fans think November will bring for Nebraska. You give them the option of 0 wins, 1 win, split 2-2, or they win 3 or 4. Where do you land?
I think they're going to win at least 2. I would probably have put 2-2. That would probably be my prediction. I think though Saturday is such a mood ring game. You know, if
I remember those.
yeah. I don't know, that dated reference. I don't think the kids are talking
I
about mood
remember those. Like, do they really?
All the
work?
all the '90s stuff is coming back again. BC, they'll be back any
Yeah.
day now.
Yeah. So I have a lot of references like that. Like start talking about like the Uncle Phil episode on Fresh Prince, you know, that made me cry and all that stuff.
Why doesn't he want me?
How come he don't want me, man?
Yeah, that one was tough to watch. But I think this game, if Nebraska goes and plays well, gets that whole 6-win conversation wiped away. You go into the bye week. I think it can be a lot of fun. You know, I think there'll be a good mood actually. You know, for the next couple of weeks within the fan base. It's like, okay, they checked a box. Now you're kind of free to go, you know, after it. And I think this team last week showed when they play like that and they're free, they can play some pretty good football. And you heard Rule mention it Monday. I don't think they had that same freedom at Indiana. I felt like they were maybe chasing, like there was some of that, get that 6-win, get that win against a ranked team, all that stuff. You got to get it done. And so then it started to go sideways and they just couldn't get it back. But you could tell against Ohio State, it was a different mindset. It was like, no one believes that, you know, we can do this against these guys, but we do. Let's just go play football like we know we can. So if they have that, I think they can still get to 8. But I guess I'd say winding way to say I'll pick 2-2 to finish.
BC, how shocked would you be if they went 4-0? Like, is that something you're even letting yourself entertain as a possibility?
I wouldn't be shocked, but I would be incredibly impressed. I mean, it's a tough schedule still. USC, I know, has had their issues, but they got talent all over the place. Iowa, I think, you know, you always know you're going to be in for a 60-minute game there. Wisconsin's playing a lot better, so if they went 4-0, you'd have to say
that would actually be incredible. But
that's heck of a finish. So the fact that they played the way they did, though, against Ohio State, it changed the conversation where I think people are going to the stadium with some more juice this week. I think that's a big deal from what happened in Columbus, too. I think had it been a performance where you kind of get embarrassed again on national TV, obviously the home crowd would have wanted to pick them up and all that stuff, but it would have been sort of a slow walk into the stadium, kind of one of those feels, you know. I think it's different because of the way they played out there, and I think this crowd will be amped up for this game and is going to make it tough on UCLA, and Nebraska's got to use that to its benefit and make this, you know, a place that neither UCLA nor Wisconsin can walk away and get a win. You got to protect your backyard, and there's 2 wins right there if you can do that.
BC, I tried to, because and I'm full disclosure, it's not like I saw this coming, but early on, remember I asked you, I said, hey, can we draw the distinction between Dylan's play and what we think about Coach Satterfield? This was almost a month ago. And now, as we've kind of heard these last 2 or 3 weeks, it's, hey, you know, Dylan needs to play a little bit better. We've missed some throws. We've got to do this. He says he has his comments yesterday about his offensive coordinator and needing to execute. Why do you think it's hard to watch what you see happen out on the field and separate from what you think is happening philosophically as an OC?
I mean, I always think, Damon, whenever one side of the ball doesn't have the numbers that people quite want, or they think they could be up, you know, 10 spots in this particular stat or 15 spots in that, the coordinator always is going to have to take it on the chin. I mean, that's just sort of the way it is. So I think that's sort of the default reaction. I think there's things that Satterfield and those coaches would tell you. They put it on them that they could find to, you know, that can help guys improve, that they can do better. I'll tell you what I was most impressed by, and this is maybe going away from your question. Dylan answered that thing about Satterfield. He wasn't asked about Satterfield. He did it unsolicited.
Yep.
He brought him up and said, I know Sat's taking a lot of heat. The plays are there. We got to execute better, basically. Everybody saw the quote. But that's the thing I think that needs to be noted. That's impressive to me about Dylan as a 19-year-old true freshman. He understands the environment around him, and he puts that on the players and takes a little heat off the guy who's getting all the commotion, you know? That's a very mature thing to do that hopefully people recognize. He was not asked specifically about the coach. He went out of his way to say something about his coach and defend him and stand tall for him. And hopefully that impresses people, because it impressed me. So Dylan knows there's a couple of plays he could have had back that he can do better, and some throws he can make better, I think. And so in a way, I think that was his way of saying that, you know, and so that was good.
BC, you know, I'm going back to some comments that Coach Rule made in the obviously the post-game presser, and then I think on Monday as well. And he's talking about how the hardest thing to do is set the culture when you haven't really won yet. And I guess I'm looking at this Satterfield situation, and I don't think anybody would argue, like, yeah, there's things Nebraska could do better offensively, whether that's an execution thing, whether it's a scheme and coaching thing. But do you think there's a chance that, and DB and I talked about this a little on Monday, but do you think there's a chance that part of the reason Coach Rule is so loyal to Coach Satterfield is because he says, hey, like, this is a guy that I know can help me get the culture right, and we can figure out the football? I mean, I think he literally said the football is going to get better, but you have to get the culture right first. Like, do you ever entertain that version of events? Because we talk about it with players a lot, like, hey, don't sacrifice good players for bad culture, but we don't really talk about it with coaches that much.
That's interesting.
Oh, I think that matters a lot. I think you want coaches that you feel like are always going to be on the same wavelength as you, setting up the sort of mindset that allows you to have the type of team that responds to Indiana the way this one did last week. And so you have to give credit there too. I mean, that is good coaching in the rooms to get your guys like back on the horse. There's all sorts of talk about this and that, but you're able to block it out pretty well. And definitely that matters. And I think that's a big part of it. And, you know, again, I don't want to act like an apologist. I think there's things that have to improve on the offensive side of the ball too. And those guys know it. I've never been one to go directly after coaches' heads or anything like that, and I'm not going to start now. I think the culture piece that you're asking in that question is a big deal, and he's been around those coaches and knows how they establish rooms and keep guys going and all of that. And he also knows some of the challenges they're dealing with that we don't all see, you know, within certain things within the team that they have to work around that we don't know about. And he mentioned this last year at one point, like Rule had a quote about, you know, there's certain coaches I think are doing a really good job. This was last season, that people talk about all the time. And then, you know, he wasn't down talking any of his coaches, but there's other people get a lot of credit, but maybe they're coaching a position group that's more established or has guys who've been around 5 years. And of course they're going to look better. So I factor all of that in. I think the offense has plenty to prove in November, and I think they know they do. I feel like there's some staples they got out of that game against Ohio State that can be useful if they carry it forward, and so that's what I'm hoping to see Saturday. And if you do that and you are the type of team that wins like 3 of these last 4, it'll put a lot of this noise to bed in a hurry. So the opportunity's right in front of everybody to calm that down. But I did like that the leader, as far as players go on the offense, comes up and says what he did. I think that shows me good culture, too, as well as what they did in Columbus.
Hey, BC, before I let you go, do you think there's well, he's, for the time being or for however long it is, or maybe it's going into next year, there could be this collective thought of, well, they're ours, so let's just rally. Like, do you think we could ever cross over into that juncture? Or do you just think every game until it produces the results we want will be some indictment of compare and contrast and kind of internal fighting?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I see all sides of it, Damon. I understand too why fans have been, patient for a long time.
Yeah, and they're looking at the data, right? I mean, it's 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I understand the
I know.
premise, right? Like, I'm cool with that part.
There's just so much passion and want to get over the hump in certain areas that have been frustrating, and I really do feel like Saturday, if they can go out and play good football and win that game at home. Every now and then you come into a game in Lincoln where things kind of go right, or there's a moment where it feels good and people recognize something happened here that can mean something to the rest of the program building and all that. I think Saturday is an important game in that way, because if you do lose it, it's going to be tough. I mean, it's going to get really tough around here for the couple weeks and into November. If you play well and win, you really, I think, a lot of people are going to be back and be like, okay, they got that 6th win. Now let's go. I do think there's going to be a lot of that comes out of this fan base if they win. So your question's a good one. I don't know how people are going to react to, the rest of November, to like some of these inside discussions we have about each coach and all that. I think there'll always be there a little bit in a fan base that cares as much as this one does and talks about Husker football as much as we do. We don't have as many distractions as other places. Bo Pelini always used to say that. Line that he's coached at other big programs. The attention here, he said, was on the program was like different than it was even at LSU and Oklahoma. Because it was all about Husker football so much that everything was under the microscope. So that's something you always just got to deal with if you're a coach here. Is that's a good thing, and it can be a challenging thing, and but you got to accept it and work with it or around it or however you got to do it to succeed.
That's our guy, Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. BC, we appreciate it as always. We'll talk to you next week.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thanks, B.
That's Brian Christopherson, Husker 24/7. The other thing that was different between Bo Pelini stops at Oklahoma and LSU and being at Nebraska, he wasn't the head coach there. I have a hard time believing Norman, Oklahoma has more distractions than Lincoln, Nebraska. You ever been to Norman?
Yeah.
Not a lot going on there.
I have.
Not a lot going on in Norman.
And my buddy Jay.
Yeah.
Not
a lot happening in the metropolitan area of Norman, Oklahoma.
I was actually scared there for a second.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are scared there. I'm just saying.